Some breaking news. Several sources tell MS Now the House Oversight Committee believes there's been a, quote, intense White House cover-up on the Jeffrey Epstein files. The sources acknowledge that Attorney General Pam Bondi's new investigation into Epstein's ties to Democratic politicians could be, quote, weaponized, and as Democrats have been suggesting, used to redact or withhold documents. Joining me now is James Marsh, an attorney who represents several Epstein survivors. I wonder what your reaction is to that new reporting.
Well, I think we sort of saw the writing on the wall when this bill was rushed through this week, that sort of conveniently came out that there's new investigations after so many years of there being no investigations. And this was obviously one thing that my clients are concerned about. They'll keep full transparency and accountability under wraps for, conceivably years.
You represent survivor Maria Farmer, who was one of the first women to ever report Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for sex trafficking. She's now suing the government for alleged negligence over when she reported the alleged abuse and other crimes. Take a listen.
They literally just hung up and I heard nothing for 10 years. It's been an arduous journey, over 29 years of just trying to get people to hear me. Pretty much I dedicated all of my youth to this.
She dedicated her youth at a time when she just got pushed back, delayed. Now, we should note the FBI has declined to comment on the suit, but can you tell us more about it and where it stands now?
No, absolutely. I mean, what's interesting about Maria Farmer is she did actually complain not only to the NYPD, but to the FBI 30 years ago. We have a copy of her record from the FBI, and it's almost 90% redacted. So let's start with that, right? She makes this complaint, 1996. Jeffrey Epstein is already well known to federal law enforcement. He was one of the leading personas in the Tower Financial scandal, which until Bernie Madoff was the largest financial scandal in U.S. history. So he's a key witness in that and an unindicted co-conspirator. And then the State Department had also rented him, believe it or not, the Iranian consulate in New York City where he was living and engaged in a lease dispute with him during this same period of time. So he wasn't a random unknown person when Maria called. Quite the contrary. He was very well known to law enforcement. And what's most curious about her case is they found her 10 years later. It's not like she heard something in the news, called them up again and said, hey, what happened to my complaint? They found her 10 years later and contacted her about what was happening with Jeffrey Epstein leading up to his eventual conviction. So there's a lot of unanswered questions in Maria's case, but we do have the records. We know that there's at least 29, 30 pages. Most of it is redacted. So let's focus on that first. I don't know that, they called up Bill Clinton or Donald Trump to say, who's this Maria Farmer person? Let's start with her record. And I think it'll uncover a lot about the origins of Jeffrey Epstein.
The clock is ticking on the release of the DOJ's files on convicted pedophile and former friend of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, after Trump announced that he had signed the bill late last night on social media, writing this, quote, "This latest hoax will backfire on the Democrats just as all of the rest have. Thank you for your attention to this matter." The bill orders that the files be released within the next 30 days, although the precise timing of that release still unclear, as is whether the Trump administration will attempt to withhold them. As the New York Times notes, quote, "Mr. Trump's signature does not guarantee the release of all the files. The bill contains significant exceptions, including a provision protecting continuing investigations, which could mean many documents would stay confidential." In a statement, the family of Virginia Giuffre wrote this, quote, "This work is not finished. Every name must be revealed, regardless of power, wealth, or party affiliation. For Virginia, her sisters, and survivors across the world, this is a momentous step towards a long overdue justice. We await the full release of the Epstein files from the Department of Justice eagerly, and we will not stop until the full truth is out." Let's bring in New York Times opinion writer and political analyst Mara Gay. Andrew Weissman is back with us. Andrew, talk to us. What comes next here?
Well, there's very good reasons for people to be cynical about whether this administration is going to reveal everything. Why do I say that? Because in this particular situation, it doesn't require Congress to have done anything. The President of the United States can simply order the release of everything in those files. And he could also just make it very clear to the American people, including on Truth Social, which he goes to repeatedly, that everything about him will be released. In other words, he can deal with his own privacy interests and say, every single time that I am referenced, any image of me is going to be released. He has not done that. And that is notable. So he didn't need to have a congressional bill. He could have, if he wanted to be transparent, do it on his own. And he still today could answer the very simple question of whether everything with his name on it or his image on it will be released. Let me give you an example. Senator Whitehouse asked Pam Bondi about reports that there was an image in the Epstein files, just a report. He didn't say it's true or not, but a report of President Trump with young women who were half naked, and asked whether Pam Bondi had seen that. And she refused to answer that question, was notably silent in spite of being asked that question twice. And the question is, will we know that? Will there be a commitment from Donald Trump and Pam Bondi that if there are images like that, that it will be made public? And that is something that is so easy for the administration to answer, and they are not doing it, which makes you incredibly cynical. It certainly makes me incredibly cynical about whether they're going to actually be forthcoming with damaging information about the president that
It's been a tough few days for the president in the polls.
Yeah, John Berman, I would say this is probably the worst 10-day period for the president in the polls his entire second term. The numbers are just atrocious. What are we talking about here in terms of net approval rating? Well, take a look. These are all November polls. The best one of the group puts him at 14 points underwater. That's the Marquette University Law School poll, tied for the worst he's ever had in that poll. Fox, 17 points underwater. Maris, 17 points underwater. The Reuters Ipsos poll, 22 points underwater. And then taking the cake, the AP North poll, 26 points underwater. When your best poll has you still 14 points underwater, you know it's truly bad, and it's as bad as 26 points underwater. We're talking about an average well underwater with the deep blue sea, swimming with the fishes.
And now this is all parties here. If you think this is bad, Harry.
If you think this is bad, what is driving these horrific numbers for Donald Trump? Well, why don't we take a look at independents, Trump's net approval rating with independents. Back in January, he was close to even. He was at -4 points. Not great, but not terrible. Look at this number, 43 points underwater with independents in the most recent average of these polls. When you have 43 points underwater with independents, you know you're doing terribly. You can't win with this. If this holds for next year's midterm election, wave adios amigos, goodbye, see you later to that House Republican majority and that Senate Republican majority very much in danger as well. When you take a look at the Pew Research validated voter survey going back to last year, he was basically even among independents with Kamala Harris. Now he is 43 points underwater. Whatever he is doing with independents, it ain't working. They despise him at this point.
That is just a colossal drop.
Oh, my God. It's a 40-point move.
Okay, that's among certain political groups here. How about what issues may be driving this?
Okay, yeah. So we say that independents are driving Trump's decline overall. But what is pushing independents and the rest of the electorate away from Donald Trump? Away from Donald Trump. John Berman, move out of this screen. Away from Donald Trump. Well, it has everything to do with inflation. It's the cost of living, baby. That is the name of the game. You go back to January, he was 3 points above water. This was the reason why that voters gave him a second term. You look at this. Look at this. Now, 34 points underwater. My goodness gracious, that is a 37-point move in the wrong direction.
All right. I mean, inflation, you know, if people, one of the things the Fed could do to fight inflation, if that were a concern, is they would raise interest rates right now. Right now, there's been an issue of whether they'll cut them or lower them after the mixed jobs report yesterday. What do the prediction markets say now?
Yeah, okay. So Donald Trump has been pushing.
What you're seeing here is Donald Trump getting exposed in his cover-up. Destroying, manipulating, whatever he's going to end up doing. Look, could he burn the file? Remember, with Donald Trump, anything is possible. And what the House Oversight Committee is suggesting is that they worry a cover-up is happening. That files will be manipulated, destroyed, hidden, whatever, to either protect Trump, to harm his enemies, or a combination of both. And this is happening for a clear reason, because his polling is in the toilet. Trump's never been popular. We've talked about this story. Trump's never been popular. When he won the first time, he lost a popular vote by quite a bit, and he was never popular. And voters pretty immediately turned against him. Obviously, most voters were against him from the outset, but then, within a few months of him being president, his numbers had already collapsed quite a bit. And then he was never popular again, and then lost, was very unpopular, was the least unpopular he ever was when he won again the second time. Unfortunately, the voters were wrong. But the fact is, it's gotten even worse since. He's more unpopular now than ever. And as saying, this might be the worst week and a half of his entire political career, if you can believe that, given all the bad weeks he's had. And it's all because of, I think, the two things. One, he promised to lower prices and he didn't lower prices. And two, he promised to release the Epstein files. And now, if he does actually release them, he's going to release them, and this is the perception people have, in an openly manipulated way to protect him and his billionaire sicko buddies. Unacceptable stuff. And the voters are sick of it. There's a reason why even people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie and all of this are leaving Trumpism, because they know there's no future in it.